Staring at the signed divorce papers under the faint glow of a streetlight, my mind became a whirlwind of memories. The moonlight filtering through the car window reminded me of the first time I ever saw her. It was during a major cross-state case. I had just won a massive lawsuit, leaving the opposing corporation in financial ruins. As I was exiting the courthouse, high on the victory, a man, the CEO I had just bankrupted, lunged at me, his hands closing around my throat. I was caught off guard, struggling to break free, when a sudden figure intervened. Clara, with her sharp wit and even sharper instincts, had swiftly disarmed the enraged man. Her eyes, a captivating shade of emerald, met mine for the first time, and in that moment, I felt something shift inside me. She was unlike any woman I'd ever met, fierce and independent, a force to be reckoned with in her own right. We started talking, and before I knew it, I was completely smitten. That night, after a few drinks, things escalated quickly, and we ended up getting married in a spur-of-the-moment decision. It was a decision I didn't regret at first, but as the days turned into years, I realized just how different our worlds were. Clara was consumed by her career, constantly chasing the next big win, while I found myself lost in the shadows of her success, slowly losing the man I once was. Now, as I sat in the car with the signed divorce papers in my hand, I knew it was time to reclaim my life. I started the engine and drove towards home, thoughts of the upcoming courtroom battle swirling in my head. I was determined to show Clara and the entire legal community that Martin was back, and this time, I wasn't going down without a fight. A few days later, news of my comeback spread like wildfire through the legal circles. The courtroom was abuzz with anticipation as the day of our first encounter in court arrived. Clara, as always, looked poised and confident, her perfectly tailored suit exuding an air of authority. She walked into the courtroom with her head held high, not sparing me a single glance. The case we were facing off on was a high-profile criminal defense matter. Clara was representing the defendant, a wealthy socialite accused of fraud, while I was brought in by the prosecution to help build a strong case. As the trial began, the tension in the room was palpable. Clara started her opening statement, her voice smooth and persuasive, weaving a web of doubt around the prosecution's case. But I was ready. I countered with my own arguments, presenting a mountain of evidence that I had painstakingly gathered. Our exchanges were intense, each of us trying to outmaneuver the other. During a break in the trial, Clara finally approached me. "Leo, what are you doing?" she asked, her voice laced with a hint of irritation. "You know I can't let you win this case." I looked at her, meeting her gaze head-on. "Clara, this isn't about winning or losing. This is about me taking back my life. You may have thought you could keep me hidden away, but I'm not going to be your shadow anymore." She scoffed, rolling her eyes. "You think you can just waltz back into the legal world and start challenging me? You're delusional, Leo. You've been out of the game for too long." I smiled, a cold, determined smile. "We'll see about that, Clara. I may have been away, but I haven't forgotten how to fight." As the trial resumed, the battle between us intensified. Clara pulled out all the stops, using every trick in the book to try and undermine my case. But I was one step ahead, anticipating her moves and countering them with precision. Just when it seemed like the case was going in my favor, a bombshell was dropped. New evidence emerged, seemingly exonerating the defendant. Clara looked at me triumphantly, but I wasn't convinced. I knew there was something fishy about this new evidence, and I was determined to get to the bottom of it. I started my own investigation, delving deep into the background of the new evidence. I discovered that it had been planted by someone close to Clara, someone who was desperate to see her win at any cost. Could it be Julian? I wondered. I needed to find out the truth before it was too late. She took the time to carefully prepare his favorite snacks, and the two of them would spend hours poring over documents together, their heads bent close in quiet conversation. I watched from afar, a bitter taste in my mouth as I saw the way she smiled at him, the way her eyes lit up whenever he spoke. It was a side of her I had never seen before, a side that I had always hoped she would show me. One evening, as I was passing by her study, I heard them laughing together. I couldn't resist the urge to peek inside. Clara was sitting on the couch, her legs tucked under her, and Julian was sitting next to her, his arm casually draped over the back of the couch. They looked so comfortable together, so at ease, and I felt a pang of jealousy shoot through me. I knew I had no right to feel that way. After all, Clara and I were getting divorced, and she was free to do whatever she wanted. But seeing her with Julian like this, it brought back all the pain and heartbreak of the past 3 years. It made me realize just how much I had loved her, and how much it had hurt to know that she didn't feel the same way about me. The next day, I received a call from Vincent. "Leo, have you seen the news?" he asked, his voice urgent. "Clara's taking on Julian's divorce case. This is huge. It's going to be all over the media." I sighed. "Yeah, I know. I saw them together last night. She's really going all out for him." Vincent was silent for a moment. "Are you okay with this? I mean, it can't be easy for you, seeing her with him like this." I thought about it for a moment. "I don't know, Vincent. It hurts, but at the same time, I'm glad she's finally with the person she really loves. Maybe now, she'll be happy." Vincent snorted. "Happy? She's risking her entire career for this guy. And from what I've heard, the case is a lost cause. She's going to lose, and it's going to be a huge blow to her reputation." I frowned. "You really think so? I mean, Clara's a brilliant lawyer. She's never lost a case before." Vincent laughed. "Yeah, but she's never handled a divorce case before, especially not one as complicated as this. She's in over her head, Leo. And if she loses, it's going to be a disaster." I hung up the phone, feeling a sense of unease wash over me. I knew Vincent was right. Clara was taking a huge risk by taking on Julian's case, and if she lost, it could ruin her career. But at the same time, I couldn't help but admire her loyalty to him. She was willing to do anything for him, even if it meant sacrificing her own success. Over the next few weeks, the media frenzy surrounding Clara and Julian's case reached a fever pitch. Every day, there were new articles and interviews about the case, speculating about the outcome and analyzing Clara's chances of winning. The pressure was on, and I could see the toll it was taking on her. Despite the odds, Clara refused to give up. She worked tirelessly, poring over every detail of the case, determined to find a way to win. And as the trial date drew closer, I could see a glimmer of hope in her eyes. The day of the trial finally arrived. The courtroom was packed with reporters and spectators, all eager to see the showdown between Clara and the opposing lawyer. Clara walked into the courtroom, looking confident and composed, but I could see the tension in her shoulders. The trial began, and the opposing lawyer wasted no time in attacking Clara's case. He presented a mountain of evidence, arguing that Julian had no grounds for divorce and that his marriage was still intact. Clara listened calmly, taking notes as he spoke, and then it was her turn to speak. She stood up, her voice clear and confident, and began to lay out her case. She presented a series of compelling arguments, challenging the opposing lawyer's evidence and presenting her own. The courtroom was silent as she spoke, everyone hanging on to her every word. As the trial wore on, it became clear that Clara was in trouble. The opposing lawyer was a skilled negotiator, and he was able to pick apart her arguments one by one. But Clara refused to give up. She fought back with everything she had, determined to win the case for Julian. In the end, it came down to the closing arguments. The opposing lawyer went first, delivering a powerful speech that painted Julian as a selfish and unfaithful husband. Then it was Clara's turn. She stood up, took a deep breath, and began to speak. She talked about love and sacrifice, about the importance of following your heart. She spoke about Julian's dreams and his passion for music, and she argued that his marriage was a barrier to his happiness. Her voice was filled with emotion, and I could see tears in her eyes as she spoke. When she finished, the courtroom was silent. For a moment, no one moved. Then, slowly, the spectators began to applaud. Clara looked around the courtroom, a look of surprise on her face. She had done it. She had won the case. As the judge announced the verdict, I felt a strange mixture of emotions. I was happy for Clara, proud of her for her hard work and determination. But at the same time, I couldn't help but feel a sense of sadness. Our marriage was over, and there was no going back. After the trial, Clara and Julian walked out of the courtroom together, their arms wrapped around each other. They looked so happy, so in love, and I couldn't help but smile. Maybe, finally, Clara had found her happiness. And as for me, it was time to move on, to start a new chapter in my life. "Are you friends with Clara and Julian?" he asked. I smiled politely, not quite sure how to answer. Before I could respond, he continued, "They're quite the pair, aren't they? I've known them since college." Clara was always so focused on her studies, And Julian, well, he was the life of the party. But they had this connection, you know? Everyone could see it. I felt a pang in my chest, but forced myself to keep smiling. Yeah, they seemed close. The owner nodded, leading me down a long corridor lined with framed photos of famous patrons. Oh, they're more than close. Clara was heartbroken when Julian left for Cambridge. She threw herself into her work, became this unstoppable force in the legal world. But every time Julian had a concert, she'd drop everything and go. And he'd always save a front row seat for her. We reached the private room, and he held the door open for me. Inside, a large round table was set with an array of fine china and crystal glasses. The walls were adorned with paintings of musical instruments, and a soft, classical melody played in the background. As I took a seat, the owner leaned in, his voice lowering. Between you and me, I always thought they'd end up together. It's a shame he got married. But now that he's divorced, maybe things will finally work out for them. I thanked him for the information, feeling a strange mix of anger and sadness. I had always suspected Clara's feelings for Julian, but hearing it from an outsider made it all the more real. I sat there, lost in thought, until the sound of voices outside the room pulled me back to the present. Clara and Julian entered, laughing and chatting with their friends. Clara's eyes widened slightly when she saw me, as if she had forgotten I was there. Julian, on the other hand, greeted me warmly, pulling out a chair for me to sit closer to the group. "Leo, I'm so glad you could make it," Julian said, pouring me a glass of wine. "I wanted to properly thank you for your help with the divorce case. You really saved the day." I took a sip of the wine, the rich flavor swirling in my mouth. "It was nothing, really. I'm just glad things worked out for you." As the evening progressed, the conversation turned to the legal world. One of Clara's old classmates, a young lawyer named Emily, turned to me. "Leo, Clara mentioned you have a law degree. What kind of law do you practice?" I hesitated for a moment, glancing at Clara. She was staring at me intently, a curious expression on her face. "I used to focus on civil litigation, specifically divorce cases," I said, keeping my voice steady. Emily's eyes lit up. "That's amazing. I've always been interested in family law. Do you have any advice for someone just starting out?" I was about to answer when Clara interrupted. "Leo's just a hobbyist," she said, her voice cold. "He doesn't practice law anymore." There was a moment of awkward silence, and I could feel the tension in the air. Julian cleared his throat, trying to lighten the mood. "Well, regardless of his professional status, Leo's knowledge of the law was incredibly helpful to me. I'm sure he could give you some great insights, Emily." Just then, the waiter arrived with the first course, a delicate seafood appetizer. The conversation shifted to food and travel, but I could still feel Clara's eyes on me, watching my every move. After dinner, Julian stood up, raising his glass. "I want to make a toast," he said, his voice filled with emotion. "To Clara, the best lawyer in the world and my dearest friend. Without you, I don't know where I'd be. And to Leo, for his unexpected but invaluable help. Here's to new beginnings and old friendships." We all raised our glasses and drank. As I looked around the table at the happy faces, I couldn't help but feel like an outsider. Clara and Julian belonged together, and I was just a remnant of a past that never should have been. But as the night wore on, I also felt a sense of relief. Soon, I'd be free to start my own new beginning, away from the shadow of Clara and her unrequited love. As we were leaving the restaurant, Clara pulled me aside. "What are you playing at, Leo?" she asked, her voice low and angry. "Why did you give Julian legal advice? And why did you tell Emily you're a lawyer?" I looked at her, meeting her gaze head on. "I'm just being myself, Clara. You never took the time to get to know me, so don't act so surprised. And as for Julian, I was just helping a friend. Isn't that what you would do?" She stared at me for a long moment, her eyes searching mine. Then, without a word, she turned and walked away, leaving me alone in the dimly lit street. I watched her go, a sense of finality washing over me. Our marriage was truly over, and I was ready to face whatever came next. Clara finally came home the next day. "Leo," she called out habitually. There was no response. She frowned, a flicker of frustration crossing her face as she approached the foyer. She noticed the entryway drawer was slightly ajar. Inside, she saw a dark red folder. Pulling it out, she realized it was the divorce certificate she had carelessly tossed in the drawer yesterday. Her eyes widened in shock as the reality of the situation hit her. She flipped through the pages, her hands trembling slightly. "Leo," she called out again, her voice now tinged with a hint of panic. She rushed through the house, checking every room, but it was empty. Only then did she notice the note on the kitchen counter. "Clara, our marriage was a lie from the start. I'm done being the man you pretend not to see. I've reclaimed my identity as Martin, and I'll see you in court someday. Leo." Clara sank onto a chair, the note fluttering to the floor. She couldn't believe he was really gone. And Martin? Leo was Martin? The realization sent a shockwave through her. She had been so focused on Julian, on her career, that she had completely overlooked the man who had been by her side for 3 years. Meanwhile, news of Martin's triumphant return in North City spread like wildfire. Clara's colleagues and friends were abuzz with the news. "Did you hear? Martin's back, and he won that huge cross-border case," Emily exclaimed, rushing into Clara's office. "Can you believe it? I always thought there was something more to Leo. He seemed so knowledgeable about the law." Clara's stomach twisted into knots. She had always dismissed Leo as just a stay-at-home husband, someone beneath her notice. And now, he was the talk of the legal world, the man she had once considered her rival. As fate would have it, a new case landed on Clara's desk. A high-profile corporate lawsuit that involved both North and South City. And to her horror, the opposing counsel was none other than Martin. Clara stared at the case file, her mind racing. She couldn't let him win. She had her reputation to protect, her perfect win rate. But deep down, she knew this wasn't just about the case anymore. It was about the man she had hurt, the man she had underestimated. The day of the pre-trial hearing arrived. Clara walked into the courtroom, her head held high, trying to mask her nervousness. Martin was already there, sitting at the counsel table, looking every bit the formidable lawyer she remembered from her early days in the legal field. Their eyes met across the courtroom, and for a moment, time seemed to stand still. Clara saw a flash of pain and determination in Martin's eyes, and she felt a pang of guilt. But she quickly pushed those feelings aside. This was a courtroom, and she was a lawyer. She had a job to do. "Ms. Clara," the judge said, breaking the silence. "Let's begin with your opening statement." Clara stood up, took a deep breath, and began to speak. Her voice was confident, her arguments well-crafted. But as she spoke, she couldn't help but steal glances at Martin. He was listening intently, his expression unreadable. When it was Martin's turn to speak, his voice was calm and measured, yet it carried a weight that sent shivers down Clara's spine. He methodically picked apart her arguments, presenting counter-evidence that left her reeling. As the hearing ended, Clara knew she was in trouble. Martin had come prepared, and he was determined to win. She walked out of the courtroom, her mind already racing with ways to turn the case around. But she couldn't shake the feeling that this was more than just a legal battle. It was a battle of pride, of past mistakes, and of the future of their careers. On the other hand, maintain my composure amidst the media frenzy. I returned to my office, focusing on preparing for the upcoming high-profile corporate lawsuit against Clara. The case was complex, involving a web of financial fraud and corporate espionage, and I was determined to use every legal weapon at my disposal. Clara, meanwhile, was drowning in a sea of negative publicity. Her phone wouldn't stop ringing with reporters seeking comments, and her inbox was flooded with messages from clients questioning her judgment. Her law firm's partners were also breathing down her neck, worried about the impact on the firm's reputation. "Clara, you need to get a hold of this situation," her senior partner barked over the phone. "We can't afford to have our star lawyer caught up in this mess." Clara spent hours poring over the case files, trying to find a way to outmaneuver me. But every time she thought she had a solid argument, memories of our past would surface, clouding her judgment. She remembered the way I used to make her coffee in the morning, how I would listen patiently to her rant about difficult cases, even though she never truly listened to me in return. As the trial date drew closer, the tension between us reached a boiling point. The courtroom was packed with spectators, all eager to witness the showdown between the two legal titans. Clara entered the courtroom, her head held high, but her eyes betrayed her nervousness. I, sitting at the opposing counsel's table, met her gaze with a steely resolve. The judge called the court to order, and the trial began. Clara started with her opening statement, her voice wavering slightly at first, but growing stronger as she got into the rhythm. She laid out her client's case, painting a picture of innocence and misinterpretation. But I was ready. When it was my turn, I stood up slowly, my eyes never leaving Clara's. "Your Honor, ladies and gentlemen of the jury," I began. "The opposing counsel would have you believe a fairy tale, but the truth is far more sinister." I then presented a mountain of evidence, including emails, financial records, and witness testimonies, all pointing to the blatant fraud committed by Clara's client. Clara's face grew pale as she listened to my arguments. She tried to counter, but I was one step ahead, anticipating her every move. "Objection!" she shouted, jumping to her feet. "The witness's credibility is highly questionable. This is nothing but a smear campaign." The judge looked at me, waiting for my response. "Your Honor, the witness has provided irrefutable evidence, and we have the documentation to back it up." "The opposing counsel is grasping at straws," I said calmly. As the trial dragged on, the battle between us became increasingly heated. Clara and I exchanged barbs, each trying to gain the upper hand. But in the back of her mind, Clara couldn't shake the feeling of guilt. She knew that she had mistreated me during our marriage, and now she was paying the price both professionally and emotionally. During a recess, Clara approached me. "Martin, can we talk?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. I looked at her, my expression cold. "There's nothing to talk about, Clara. This is a courtroom, and we're adversaries." She grabbed my arm. "Please, just give me a minute. I want to apologize." I pulled my arm away. "Apology accepted. Now let's focus on the case." With that, I walked away, leaving her standing there, alone and defeated. As the trial neared its end, it was clear that my side had the upper hand. The jury deliberated for hours before finally reaching a verdict. Guilty. Clara's client was found guilty on all counts, and her perfect win rate was shattered. The courtroom erupted in chaos. Reporters rushed to get quotes, and Clara's client was led away in handcuffs. I packed up my files, ready to leave. As I walked past Clara, she looked up at me, her eyes filled with tears. "I'm sorry, Leo," she said. "I really am." I paused for a moment, looking down at her. "It's too late for sorry, Clara. We're done." With that, I walked out of the courtroom, leaving Clara to face the consequences of her actions and the ruins of her once glittering career. But little did we know, this was just the beginning of a new chapter in our complicated relationship, filled with even more twists and turns.